Good evening, this is HimanshuBhayani, and you are watching the digital video bulletin of datelinegujaratnews.com on its YouTube handle. So, what's buzzing across the world? What's a buzz in the world of news or the news across the world? So, the global media headlines are largely dominated by the US drone, which has been hit by a Russian warplane in the Black Sea. And the Russian diplomats have responded to that, saying that that particular drone was supporting the Ukrainian attacks. So this is the kind of news which is being dominated across the world headlines, and massive protests basically in Pakistan in support of Imran, and several wounded while protesting, and in the clashes between supporters of Imran Khan and Pakistan police. So that's the news which is being dominated across the world. And FIFA, the Football Association of the World, has announced an expanded format for the 2026 World Cup football. And there is a commentary in the Western media which says that the looming bank failures somewhere are indicating more inflation and loss in wages. So that means a clear-cut signals and symptoms of recession. So what is happening is, let's move ahead a little bit in Asian subcontinent, what's happening in Asia. So in Asia, the news headlines are largely dominated by the news from the Taiwan, and the new presidential candidate has pledged that he would protect the island against China. The breakdown in communication links with the world is seen somewhere like a kind of wartime frailty by the Taiwanese administration, and Taiwan equally unveiled the portable drones to counter the China tension. So that's mainly the news, and with this, what has happened is that China has warned accused allies for being on the path of error and danger. So these are the links largely which are segregated in our newsletter and our newswire. You can access this, click this and read this on our website datelinegujaratnews.com. And what's happening more in China is that there is a lot of a buzz on social media about the return of the wolf warrior diplomat to the foreign ministry. Now, who is this wolf warrior diplomat? That's an interesting piece. If you want to read, you can go and just click this. And another piece which is being dominated, quantum which is being dominated, is mainly from the Myanmar. The mass killings have been reported in Myanmar, and the Myanmar matter needs to be taken to the International Criminal Court. That's what the UN Security Council has suggested, and they're keen on that. So apart from that, what's happening in the Korean Peninsula? North Korea has fired 2 ballistic missiles. The Pentagon spokesperson has responded to this, saying that he sees the use of nuke weapons by North Korea as its own end. And there has been reports of the joint military exercise between South Korea and US Army, and that's about the river crossing, what they have done. And that is somewhere analytical piece again has been written in the Western media, that are these joint military exercises somewhere to curb the China activity. So the AUKUS, the US Army participating with the South Korea in military drills, a lot of things are happening in the Asian subcontinent as far as beyond the diplomacy doors kind of activities are concerned. South Korea is likely to end the mask mandate, in the public transportation by next week. That's the news. That's a good news. And 13 people have been arrested in Singapore for alleged rental scam. And while most of the people across the world are now fearing that they would not travel again, and Japan is leading the pack. That's a research report which has been making buzz across the Asian media. And interestingly, what has happened in Vietnam is, it's a point of worry, of course, but a pig-related disease symptoms have surfaced in humans, and Vietnam is all on alert. So I think now with this new wave of H3 and influenza, H3N2 and influenza and all this, I think a new wave is rising slowly and gradually, and we need to keep ourselves much on a caution. Interestingly, in Thailand, what has happened? A woman has won a lottery, and the husband is accusing that his wife is hiding her winnings. Which wife doesn't hide her winnings if she wins a lottery? Any which ways, going ahead in magnificent Middle East. What's happening in magnificent Middle East is that Saudi Arabia has tested new cooling methods for the roads, how to keep the roads cool, because the temperature is always high in summers, and that's what it is. And the news in the Middle East media is largely about the China brokered Saudi-Iranian restoration of diplomatic relations, the way activities are happening in Iran. So that's where the attention of the world is actually. And in Israel, what's happening? The Middle East media even has a lot of news today from Israel, and they say that researchers oversold Israeli COVID shots. So that's and wasted millions of dosages. So that's something which the regulatory authorities have flagged and they've alarmed basically. And Israel may provide a military aid to Ukraine. Now, as soon as this news comes, Russia invites the Hamas leaders to visit Kremlin. So look at the, as we said yesterday, that the diplomacy seems to be at its high pitch in the world, and this is happening. Saudi Arabia has some good news, some good piece of news. The energy minister in Saudi Arabia said that the nation has decided not to sell oil to any countries imposing price caps. So they would not sell oil to such countries which would go for a price capping while they are supplying this oil basically. And there's only one bank which has now started opening LCs for Pakistan's crude import, because the way economic situation is there of Pakistan, but there has been one Saudi bank which is supporting this. And if you want to read which bank is this, you can go on our website, click the link and read in the Middle East pack. And of course, amidst all buzz, Egypt is all set to announce its energy strategy. ऐसी भी कोई strategy होती है, energy strategy. So something to learn from Egypt, I suppose. How do you unveil your energy strategy and what happens with your energy pack? Mysterious Africa has a lot of interesting news, because Vice President of US Kamala Harris is on a visit of Africa, and she's largely to address the conflict and the hunger issues. While she's visiting, there has been reports from Somalia of 3 soldiers killed in a suicide bombing. And shockingly, Zimbabwe has registered 69,000 adolescent mothers. And what's happening is that the prolonged power cuts in South Africa, that's making impact on the poultry business and the restaurant sector. And while these power cuts are going on in South Africa, a man tried to steal a cable which was being repaired, and in Joburg, and he burnt while stealing a live cable. So these things are also happening in South Africa. And the death toll has risen to, almost 6 are reported dead and 31 are still missing in the ferry disaster which happened in Gabon in Africa. And yesterday we talked about the demonetization, not the demonetization actually, but the introduction of the new currency notes in Nigeria. Now today there is a kind of a critical piece which says that Nigeria's efforts to introduce new currency is being read as disaster, and they have not been able to handle it. So people were people were queuing out of the banks to get their notes changed. Similar thing what happened during the demonetization in India. So we said, I think probably we need to learn from Nigeria, but today there is a critical piece on how Nigeria has been handling the situation. And what is happening on the Business Connect? Total Energies will sanction its $6 billion Angolan project, a project in Angola. And there is one more news. You heard of a company called Cipla in India. Now Cipla has a Ugandan business which is into chemicals, and a Mauritian company is planning to buy an equity in that company, and that's the deal which is being reported across the African media. Interestingly, in European media is of course loaded with the news of the US-Russia drone collision. But what's happening interestingly, there is one fantastic piece of news which will make you laugh also, and which will make you feel that how the world has gone. In Germany, a man stabbed a person in sauna over a heated argument on the size of their penises. So, where the world is going, it's crazy. And that's really unbelievable. But this has happened in Germany. And Putin's remarks over Germany that it's already occupied territory has kind of created ripples. And there has been reports of Russia is sacrificing its mercenary forces like a live meat. About the Wagner Group, which we had been talking yesterday, that there has been some concerns about Wagner Group's presence in Africa, and that's what it is. And there has been some interesting report as to how China and Russia are deploying weapons in the space to target the US satellites. So God only help them. But equally, what is happening on the NATO front? There has been some revelations that Boris Yeltsin, the ex-president of the Russia, basically, he privately supported the NATO expansion in 90s, and this has been taken by a storm across the media, in European media. And there has been also a buzz the way Swedish PM said that Finland is likely to join NATO before Sweden. So this is the news. But there has been a news from the Poland, a kind of pack of the news from the Poland, which is being making an interesting read. The justice minister in Poland was seen carrying pistol in his belt. Justice minister with a gun. And the pedophile priests in Poland have become a kind of top political issue. with the way the things have been happening. And in few developments, what are there on the business front is that Europe is out of the immediate energy crisis with the way there were some sanctions on Russia by the West. But equally, the renewable and the thrust seems to be in Europe in the renewable area, mainly in the energy, wind, and the tidal form of energy. So, Polish president has kind of inked the wind turbine law, and following that, the Portugal's renewal seems to be better than the OECD average. That's the report which has appeared. And on the business front, again, Albania is eyeing a tourism boom. Of course, we said the world may not travel again the way it is, but amidst that, Albania is eyeing a tourism boom. And there is a company, a consulting company in areas of energy, which is called Wood. Wood has existed the offshore labor supply business from the Gulf of Mexico. So they have come out of that business. They have sold that business. And in alarming report, what has come up is that Scotland records thousands of more deaths than the births in 2022. Now already the European population, there is an issue on this, and deaths are more than births. So that's how it is. America, the land of dreams. What's happening in America? Joe Biden has inked an executive order to advance the gun control measures. Now, that is something really interesting. And what comes as a shocking development, which is being reported from San Francisco, is that payment of 5 million US dollars, it will be given to every black adult. That's how the newspaper headline, the news headlines read in US. So it's like 15 lakh rupees coming to an account in India when it was promised in 2014. And there is an interesting detailing about it, that they say that the elimination of personal debt and tax burdens, guaranteed annual incomes of at least US dollar 97,000 for 250 years, and homes in San Francisco for just $1 per family. That's the package being worked out. This is an interesting read. You should go on the our website and try to click that link and read it. And what's happening on the Canadian front? The political temperature, the climate in Canada might be chilling, but the political temperature is all on the rise. There has been an opinion piece in the Canadian media which reads that Trudeau is crushing the free speech in Canada. And in another letter written to the editor, in the, letter to the editor section of the Globe and Mail, the report has appeared in form of an opinion piece which says that Canada as a nation is not being run out of Ottawa. Then from where it is run out? But surprisingly, it's run out from Beijing. So there are kind of allegations of Chinese ties into the Canadian administration. And how the Chinese media reports of this, basically whatever is going on in Canada, is that US, they have quoted the Canadian politician who said that US is likely behind the Nord Stream blast. Now the US agencies had unveiled that this was a kind of act, the way it had happened, a war act, but now this seems that it's bouncing back to US with the statements of the Canadian minister reported in the Chinese media. So amidst that, what is happening is that good news for people who wish to immigrate to Canada. Sask immigration nomination is likely to increase by 42%. That's the Sichuan region, mainly the Gujaratis. The Gujarat and the people from Gujarat and Gujaratis go to the Sichuan region. And the British Columbia has improved the Cedar LNG project. Now, these are some good news in terms of business coming from Canada. And what's the news splash across the US media is largely dominated by the SVB collapse, the Trump trials. However, amidst all this noise, what's happening is that Army will spend at least $331 million in 18,000 Gen Next Squad weapons in US. So that's something everybody will be eyeing, at least in the arms market. And while the US urges Turkey to allow a NATO expansion, so that is also a kind of a news which is coming from the American landscape. And there has been an opinion piece after yesterday's allegations of Joe Biden that Donald Trump is responsible for SVB collapse. So there has been a piece which says that SVB was Donald Trump's bailout. But equally, what has happened is that the US dollar has found some kind of a support in Asian markets, and amidst these claims of banking crisis fears which are calming down, that's the commentary which is coming mainly from the analysts and the financial experts across the world. So the deal streets and the money markets somewhere feel that they are a little bit kind of cushioned against this. But there is another report which says that the assets of US banks are worth 2 trillion less than their accounts report, and 200 banks could be at a risk if customers start and rush and withdraw their deposits. That's been a report by one of the academicians, and they warned this. So in contrast to this, what has happened is that the US lenders have racked in deposits with some of the leading names, and after the three banks failed, so they've gone to the kind of big banks, and these big banks have seen a kind of huge inflows in their deposits. So somewhere it's immune the money market with the big bankers and the confidence in US banking system to an extent. Of course, the rating agencies today have kind of downgraded the US banking and banks in US, but somewhere the major six banks or the major players are getting huge inflows after the collapse of these banks. So the deposits are being given to those big players. In another news, what is happening is the CEOs are using chat GPT and across their businesses, and this is indeed an interesting insight at how it could change the business models. Also, the federal investigators have examined the Trump media over the allegations of possible money laundering, and lawmakers in Mexico, they have alarmed the regulators have alarmed to the general public and the media and everybody, saying that the narcotics flavored pills are being sold on pharmacies. This is something shocking. So while in Caribbean archipelago, what's happening is that report has surfaced of arrest of a 24 years old female YouTuber in Cuba who had been kind of reporting all about the life in Cuba and kind of against the government. So she has been arrested. That's the news. And in a pro-farmer development in Antigua and Barbuda, farmers to get 50% subsidy on water. That's the announcement made by the government over there. And similar development has been reported from Jamaica in the agriculture sector, where they say that the agriculture ministry wants to take the coffee industry higher with a greater investment and research and development initiatives. So that's happening in the agriculture sector in Latin America. In the news on the business front, DP World has launched a new air cargo logistic hub in Punta Cana at Dominica Republic. So a lot of activities happening in that infrastructure and kind of logistics area in Latin America. And the Russian Mir payment system cards have already begun to be accepted in Cuba. So this is a kind of financial development which comes from the Latin America in kind of joint activity with Russia. And there has been a news that Honduras has approached to seek a formal ties with China, but as Honduras approaches to seek a formal ties with China, Taiwan is warning them. They are telling that please do not fall into the China trap. So this is a kind of message coming to the Latin America from the Asian subcontinent. And Brazilian fund has won a road project in a PPP auction. So that's some interesting news on the Latin American infrastructure front. And inflation is all-time high in Argentina. 4 times which had gone burst. FI, as we're talking, Argentina is going to be different this time. It's indeed becoming different this time. So what's happening in the playful Pacifics? And it's that former Australian Prime Minister, AUKUS deal, the nuke-powered submarine deal is, of course, the big news. And who is going to power these nuke submarines? It's interestingly the Rolls-Royce company. The Rolls-Royce company is going to be manufacturing these nuke reactors for this nuke-powered submarine deal, which has happened with Australia. So what has happened is that the former Australian Prime Minister Paul Keating has been warning about the deadly repercussions of the submarine deal. So politics has started over a submarine deal within Australia. And what moves ahead is that Australia is now tied in the US strategy. That's a kind of commentary which is coming to ensure it retained its primacy with this AUKUS deal and the nuke deal and everything, whatever has been happening. As the news punch over the nuke-fired submarine deal heats up in media, let's see who is going to power this submarine deal. As we said, it's going to be Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce manufactured reactors are going to be powering the nuke submarines brought by Australia. And Anthony Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, on the maiden visit to Fiji. What's happening in New Zealand? In New Zealand, an order for 5-seater electric-powered plane has been placed, and it is making the headlines. Electric-powered plane. The way you plug your car or your scooters, a plane would be plugged for electric energy, and it would be running an e-plane, 5-seater. So that's the deal which is happening by Air New Zealand. And interestingly, what has happened is that there has been some report of the flood losses in New Zealand has touched almost 1 billion mark. That's the data provided by Perils. That's a company which provides the industry-wide catastrophe data to the insurers basically. And there has been some bad news from New Zealand also. The tech firm called Trade Windows has laid off some 1/3 of its staff. But equally, what's happening with New Zealand is that the new immigrants are entering New Zealand. 160,000 new immigrants will be making New Zealand their new home. And a fantastic video has been reported by New Zealand Herald. Is about a plane making a landing on the rooftop helipad of one of the iconic hotels in Dubai. You must watch this video. It's a brilliant piece of camera work, and the way it mixes with adventure and everything. So I think it's a wonderful footage. What's happening on the frozen polars? The Russian energy minister is exploring economic efficiency of exploration and construction of Arctic LNG. We said yesterday Russia was aiming 100 million tons LNG exports by 2030, and this comes the second day that the Russian energy minister is keen to take this at a new level. But equally, what happens in a parallel development is that US is equally trying to catch up to the Russia's Arctic dominance, and it says that we will also be over there. So what they have done, they have given licenses to the Willow Oil and Gas mega project in the Alaskan North Slope, but which is seen largely as a carbon bomb in the Arctic by majority of the oil and gas analysts. But it leads mainly is that the LNG frenzy, which boosts the Russian gas in Europe, but it fails on the energy security front, and that's how the things are happening. So this is the news across the world, right from New York to Sydney, and from the polars, Arctic and Antarctic, Pacific Islands, everything. In case if you have suggestions, please do suggest us. You can put it on as a comment on our YouTube handle. These are some rough cut kind of videos which we are doing. We are mastering on our editing skill also. Slowly and gradually we'll be talking across the issues, whatever is happening across India, India today has some political updates, not major, but across Maharashtra, across Delhi, and whatever is happening. The poll season is picking up in India, 2024 Lok Sabha poll. So of course the politics is going to heat up. And in Gujarat, the reports have been largely about, the one patient, a lady patient, which has been detected with the new form of influenza virus. So that's the news largely in India and Gujarat. But do keep on suggesting what we need to talk on and how we need to talk on and how we need to present the videos best for your understanding. And do keep on logging to datelinegujaratnews.com to access and read such informative pieces from across the world, what's making the news a buzz across the world. Thanks a lot for watching Dateline Gujarat. Good night.